Hello everyone, and welcome back to Board Game Replay for another update video. Now, most importantly today, we're going to be covering the Sheriff of Nottingham contest results. I got the winners chosen. I'm going to be reading those off in just a minute. But before I do, I want to tell you that I had over 400 entries into the contest, which is really cool. And along with that, I had asked if you felt like sharing maybe a board gaming story about either something that got you into the hobby or just one of the things that makes you really enjoy the hobby. You can submit that along with your entry. It wasn't required in any way, but we had actually just about half of the entries came along with a great board gaming story. And I've randomly selected some of those stories here, and I'm going to read those in just a little bit. But also, in addition to the stories, we had a lot of really nice compliments on the series. A lot of people telling us they like what we're doing and thanking us for putting out the content. And to that, I just want to say thank you so much to all those folks that said those nice things. I really can't tell you what it means to us here. It means the world to us. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. All right, so with that being said, why don't I read the contest results, and then I can go on further from there. So, the winners of the Sheriff of Nottingham contest here are John Phillips and Justin Price. So congratulations, John and Justin. I'm going to reach out to you the next day or so. I'm going to email you and get all your shipping information. I can get these games out to you as soon as possible. Now, as I mentioned, some of the entries came with a board gaming story, and John Phillips actually came with one as well, and so I'm going to read that to you now before I get to the others. So John says, when I was a kid, about 11 or so, I bought a copy of James Bond 007 Assault at a yard sale because I liked Bond at the time, and I was like, hey, there's a neat game. Then I got home and opened it up and started looking through it. It's a tactical war game with chits, played out on a big map of the volcano base from You Only Live Twice. There were all these bits and symbols and with numbers on them, and wound markers and KIA markers and all manner of other little cardboard thingies. And a rulebook full of crazy stuff about terrain level, line of sight, accuracy tables, armor strength modifiers and such, and my nerdy little brain just glommed right into it. I probably never played the damn thing right. There was a lot to keep track of, and I was only ever playing scenarios by myself, playing both sides, and I was 11. But I remember being so absorbed in the lives of those little cardboard squares, knowing who I was rooting for in each combat interaction, however it played out on the tables. Being super pumped when Tiger Tanaka miraculously survived being pinned down outside the control room where the door was blown open with dynamite, only to mourn only as a kid can when he fell to the lucky shot of a lowly henchman in the passageway leading down to the escape boats. I probably wouldn't enjoy it now, but that game was the first experience I ever had where the inanimate things I was playing with were telling me a story, were interacting with me instead of being the passive objects of my own will. That was my first taste. I thought that story was really cool, John. Thanks so much for sending that. I really like that. You know, I'd only recently got into board gaming, probably about 4 or 5 years ago for me, but that sounds like something that if I had discovered when I was a kid, it would have just completely opened my eyes up to the world of gaming. That's such a cool story. I love it. I love the playing both sides thing, too, because I still do that now. If I get a new game and I don't have no one to play with right away, I'll break it out on the table and I'll just do my best to play optimal turns on both sides. So really cool for sharing that. Thanks so much. All right, now as I said, I've got a couple of randomly selected other stories that people submitted that I'd like to read now. And let's see here. I've got the next one is from Brett Kelso, and this is about Sheriff of Nottingham. And he says, my favorite part about this game is the situations that it can create. In one of my group's games of Sheriff of Nottingham, I was the sheriff and one of the merchants said what he had in his bag, 4 bread. Then, after the fact, he went into this long explanation of how he forgot what he put in his bag. Let's just say that this particular player was one that no one in the group would have been surprised if he did actually forget what was in his bag. So given that, I did, of course, what any good sheriff would do. I opened his bag. Well, it turns out that the whole thing was just a trick to get me to do just that, and so I paid the price. Obviously, this kind of thing happens a lot in the game, but this was a particularly well-played moment. Taking into account the situation as well as the player involved, I had to tip my cap to the guy, and that's what makes this game awesome. Brett, I totally agree. I love things like that. That's why social deduction games are some of my favorite ones, just because you get those moments with somebody you think you totally know well, and you read them 100%, and then they just completely flip it around on you. Very cool story. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Now, I have another story that I want to read. This is from Travis Merkel, and this one actually came with some pictures attached to it, so I'll put those up on the screen here as we're going along. He says, my first play of Zombicide with Toxic City Mall. And if you're not familiar with Zombicide, it's a tactical miniatures game where you are, basically moving heroes around the board and destroying hordes of zombies, trying to complete objectives, and it's very much like the whole game is this big thematic, like a zombie movie, and that's how it all plays out. So, he says, my first play of Zombicide with the Toxic City Mall. The band of heroes were trapped in the mall. A growing horde of toxic zombies were in the building thanks to an unfortunate early abomination draw. Now, the abomination is this crazy, huge mass zombie that's basically unkillable, and you really can't get away from him. Our heroes were scared. If they stayed here any longer, they would be sandwiched in between the horde of zombies in the back of the mall and the horde right outside the doors. Truly stuck between a rock and a hard place, the group needed to bottle up a solution quickly. And it was Grindlock that came up with an answer. Grindlock's one of the characters in the set. A lucky bottle and gasoline combo fell into his hands after a minute of rummaging. One of the actions you can take in the game is to search for loot and pull it off of an item deck. And Grindlock says, "This is going to be so metal," he cried as he readied his throwing arm. A few sniper rifle shots from a friend thinned the herd before Grindlock unleashed his flaming Molotov cocktail at the Abomination's feet. Just a puddle of zombies were left, and the heroes marched out of them all. That's a really cool story, Travis. Thank you. I think that's one of the things I really like about those kind of games, those super thematic games where everybody's sitting there like biting their nails, and you think, oh, it's all over, and you just happen to have that lucky draw of the components for a Molotov cocktail, and basically, that's the only thing that can kill the Abomination, essentially. One of the very few things that can kill the Abomination. So that's really cool. And looking at these pictures here, that looks like it was a lot of fun. So thank you for sharing that, Travis. That's really cool. All right, now I've got one more story that I want to read, and this one I did not randomly select. This is one that I actually chose from one of our viewers. His name is Chris, and I actually reached out to him because I was really touched by his story, and I asked him if he wouldn't mind if I shared this as well. And Chris says, his gaming story says, "I live with PTSD. It makes interaction with others difficult as it does daily activities. The two ways I diffuse are reading and collecting comic books and tabletop gaming. Now, I only tend to play with my brother and my best friend. Seeking new gaming groups is something that I shy away from. I'm afraid of what others might think of me. That was until I took a trip to my gaming night at my local gaming store. When I arrived with my brother, we were basically the only people there. I was comfortable, and we got to play some games we hadn't played before. As time passed, more people showed up, and I began to feel nervous. My brother, noticing my discomfort, asked if I wanted to go. But I wanted to try. I didn't want my mental illness to beat me up for the umpteenth time. So we stayed. Then someone asked if he could join in our game of King of Tokyo, and my brother and I were about to play. I took a deep breath and offered him a seat. As we went along, the laughter grew, our enjoyment grew. This fun, silly monster game brought these strangers together, and it helped me keep my illness at bay. I enjoyed myself. My brother was both proud and happy that I had found some happiness, even if it was momentary. And I think that's the power that tabletop games have." Now, Chris, I just want to say thank you again so much for submitting that story and allowing me to share it here today. I think it really does speak to the power of tabletop gaming, as you mentioned. I think there's something special about this hobby that I haven't quite seen in any of the other hobbies I've ever followed. I mean, I think there's the social interaction that it creates, and just the community around it is something that's just fantastic. And it really, like as you described, sitting down with a total stranger, rolling dice, playing a silly game about fighting monsters in a city, but you can connect with a complete stranger you've never met before and have a memorable experience. And I think that's such a great thing to hear. And for someone in your condition, that mental illness can't be easy to deal with. And I think that was extremely brave of you to go down there and take that shot. And I hope tabletop gaming continues to be something that you can use as an outlet to help with that. And it sounds like you've got a great brother there and a great friend. And I just wish you all the best. And I really appreciate you sharing that story. It means a lot to hear that. All right, so that's all for the stories I'm going to share today. I'd certainly like to keep going and share more with you, but there was just way too many to be able to cover in a short video here. But that being said, I actually am going through my inbox. There's still some that I haven't even read yet because there were so many submissions. And as I read them, I've been responding to let you know that I've read it. So don't worry, I am going to check out your story if I haven't yet. But I thought what might be fun is there's so many great stories submitted, and I'm the only one that gets to read them. So what might be cool is I'm going to make a thread over on our Board Game Geek Guild. We wanted to use this more anyway, and I'll put a link to that in the description. And maybe you can submit some of your stories in there to share with some of the other viewers that might want to see it, might want to submit their own stories. I think there was some great stuff in there, and I always love reading about an epic Battlestar Galactica game, or a crazy betrayal and resistance, or just a great origin story of how you got into the hobby. So that stuff's really fun for me to read. I like hearing that kind of stuff. And so maybe if we make a thread about it over on the guild, we get some good interaction with the rest of the community here, and maybe get some good chatter. I think it'd be fun. So again, I'll put a link to that in the description. You can go check it out. And the Board Game Geek Guild is something we want to use more anyway. We hear all this great feedback from you guys on YouTube comments, and we get emails. But this might be a good way to kind of chat about different things. Maybe suggestions for upcoming games, discussions about certain games, questions, comments, basically anything. And this might be a good way to get it started. So, yeah, check that out if you're interested. Also, if you're interested in our micro badge, we have a little board game replay micro badge that we made. If you're interested in getting one, just shoot me a message on there. I'm going to put my Board Game Geek username in the description as well. And just send me a Geekmail, and I'll give you the money to buy one of our badges, so you can represent Board Game Replay if you like. All right, so the last thing I want to cover is some general news about the channel, what we're going to be up to over the next couple of weeks, and maybe some of our plans for the future. So first of all, our next game we're going to be putting up, our next video is going to be Risk Legacy. So if you're familiar with this game, don't worry, there won't be any spoilers in our replay video. I'm going to cut that together in our usual fashion, just covering our first game and some of the discussion that came from that. Now, if you're not familiar with this game, Risk Legacy is a campaign-style game based on the super simple rules of basic Risk. But as the game continues on, certain conditions are met and additional rules are added to the game, permanent changes are made to the board, and things like that. So you can even see, just looking here, some of these packets have conditions on them, and when you meet that condition during the game, you open up that packet, and it adds something new to the game. And for our replay video, as I said, we're not going to spoil any of that. We don't, if you want to pick this game up yourself, we don't want to spoil anything for you there. But if you're interested in spoilers, if you want to see the whole game spoiled, we're going to be actually recording our entire series of Risk Legacy. We've already recorded the whole first game, and we're going to do that for all of our subsequent games, for all 15 games. So if you're ever interested in Risk Legacy and want to watch how a full campaign unfolds, we're going to have that for you. We're going to be kind of uploading them as we play them. So they might be infrequent because, you know, who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of months, but we'll try to play it as often as we can, and whenever we do, we're going to record the whole thing, and we'll put it up on our channel a couple days later. One of the other ones we're probably going to play soon is Imperial Assault. I think that would make for a good video, and we're right in the middle of the campaign with that too, so I think it'll showcase a lot of the different elements of that game. Along with that, I'd really like to play Merchants and Marauders, and I really enjoy that game. I think it would make for a good video as well. We just got to get the practice games in with the guys, and that one pushes the 3-hour mark, so that one's not easy to get to the table very often. But that's definitely one that we're thinking about doing here soon. But the last thing I want to mention is we've been talking as a group, as our gaming group, and we're trying to find ways to get out more content to you guys, because, you know, there's always these great requests and we get all this great feedback, and we're thinking that we're probably going to start doing more live streaming, just as a way to put out some content without having to kind of go back and do a lot of editing, because that's a really time-consuming part. And I certainly don't mean to sound like I'm complaining. I enjoy editing. I really like putting the series together, but it is very time-consuming, and our schedules are, you know, a little tight. So if you think that sounds like a cool idea, if it's something you'd be interested in, let me know. I think we'll probably get together, you know, that way we can get together on a weeknight some night, you know, throw up the webcam, maybe do a Google Hangout, and then obviously I'll post it to the YouTube channel after the live stream as well. But we had gotten good feedback from our Extra Life coverage where we streamed for the full 24 hours. So maybe something like that on a smaller scale. We'll get together, you know, every now and then, put up a video, and just, you know, maybe take some requests of games to play via our Board Game Geek Guild. Maybe talk about some games that you'd like to see played, and we could do that for you via live stream. So let me know if that sounds like something you're interested in. We definitely like to put out more content. I think that's probably the best way to do it in the short term for you. So I think that'll do it for us today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, everybody, for your contest submissions and your great stories, and as well as congratulations to the winners for Sheriff of Nottingham. I'm going to get in touch with you guys very soon. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the YouTube comments below, or maybe join us over in our Board Game Geek Guild. We'd all love to hear from you. All right, well, thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.